Kodak Retina IIa. This is an early example. You can see because it has the film reminder dial below the rewind knob and of course the small diameter rewind knob. Looks comparatively tidy. Problem with the leather. Leather's peeling up at the corners here. A couple of Zeiss-bumps on here. I think I'll probably see if I can peel that leather back. Usual little bit of paint loss on the back door, that's quite common of course. There's little spots of dirt and or corrosion on the top cover. Front's a bit, doesn't exactly spring out into position, but then again many of them do not. That's not particularly a problem. Focus is quite stiff and dry, but it's by no means a bad example. Let's set the shutter speed to a 50th. As the film lever advance, it does, and the frame counter works. Shutter fires. Sounded a bit slow. I'm looking out the window checking the rangefinder. Well, it does have a rangefinder patch, but it's ridiculously out of adjustment. The rangefinder, when looking at an infinity target, the image is aligned nicely there at somewhere between 12 and 15 feet. So the rangefinder is well out of adjustment and somewhat yellow and hazy. Yellow and hazy is also pretty much the default position for things like that until they've been serviced. Now the button. The rewind button is somewhat exposed, you might notice. On later cameras it's more deeply recessed and harder to press in. Of course you can accidentally press it when it's not recessed, and that's probably why Kodak changed that fairly promptly. What's the serial number? 431,409. Well, off the top of my head I don't know where that lies in the series other than it was an early camera. No roller on the back door here, just has a couple of guides. The shutter is a synchro Compur. The earlier ones of course would have had a Compur-Rapid shutter, so it's not one of the earliest examples by any means. Big Zeiss bump here, great big lump of green crud on that strap lug there underneath that leather. So all the leather is probably going to have to come off this camera. Just because it's got enough faults, each of them minor in their way, but taken together mean that it's probably worth dealing with it by taking the leather off. I will check that. If the leather looks like it's particularly well stuck here, you can use keyhole surgery techniques at the corner here. If you can get underneath the corner, you can scrape out all that scunge, clean the metal and the leather successfully with toothpicks and pieces of cotton bud and solvent, and then glue it back down, and it saves you having to remove the whole piece. This leather of course is quite thin. It's particularly prone to tearing across here where it's cut to go around the strap lug, or down here at this edge where it may be skived, might be quite thinned out. Likewise on the other side, these bumps that you get on the rivets of the hinge line there, they're very rarely worth trying to deal to. The leather there is very thin and it's very prone to tearing. So minor bumps like these particular ones on the hinge line there, I would leave those alone. This one up here at the strap lug I can probably get to, and I'll clean that out without removing this piece of leather. The leather on the camera base, obviously we've got bumps here, bumps there. I'm going to peel it back as far as this point anyway, just because I need access to the screw for removing the struts mechanism, and it's good practice to peel it back as far as here, and then your line it's just about invisible. When you glue it back down, you don't notice it. If you just fold the leather back from where you need access to, you'll end up with a line across there that's quite obvious. Right. Well, I'll pull this down. I'll let you know if I strike anything entertaining, but I expect this one's just going to be straightforward. Well, at least I hope so. But, perhaps that's a vain hope. I've had a series of tricky ones of late. As I said, the rangefinder was somewhat murky looking. I want to see, as an experiment, to see how much of an improvement I can make with minimalistic cleaning. I'm going to strip it down completely anyway, but stripping them down is a bit fraught. It's probably not to be undertaken lightly, and I wonder whether cleaning things without the full strip down will provide a good deal of the benefit. I strongly suspect I can get 80% of the benefit with 20% of the work, that often being the way of things. So, how would I start? Well, I'd obviously start by cleaning the windows and the top cover. So, I'll clean the outside glass first and see how much of an improvement that makes, if any. First, I suppose I need a baseline. All this is fairly subjective because I don't have before and after shots. It's only how I feel it looks. Yeah, that's pretty grimy. I'll clean the cover. Now, normally these ports you'd be cleaning them with the top cover in position, because we're only cleaning the outside glass first. Now, the eyepiece here at the back was pretty grimy. And that looks quite different already. I can tell that the inside surface is not good. But if I just clean the outside surfaces, what sort of a improvement would I get? Would it suddenly make the rangefinder a pleasure to use? Or not? We'll clean the outside windows. I'll see what that looks like. It's certainly brighter, but it's not good. The next area, well, presuming you'd removed the top cover, you could clean the inside surfaces of those viewfinder windows. Of course, the rear one's the hardest to get to, but you can poke a cotton bud in at an angle and sweep it around, and you can do a pretty fair job doing that. The front windows are a bit easier to get to, mostly because they're bigger, I suppose. And having cleaned the outside ones first, it makes it easier to judge if you've managed to clean the inside surfaces. The outside surfaces, you can judge the cleanliness by the reflections on the surface. That's harder to do when the surface is in some recess. Right, let's have another check out the window. Now that's definitely brighter. That made quite a significant difference, and I would say that that's probably a third of the way on to a clean viewfinder. So far we haven't even touched the rangefinder mechanism itself. So the next part would be the rangefinder surfaces we can easily get to. Well, obviously the front surface here on the arm is easy to get to. It's solid glass, no silvering, nothing dodgy to deal with. And the prism here, the front surface of the prism, we can clean that easily. We have good access. At the back, the little window at the back here, the eyepiece window if you like, we have access to that. Again, we've got nothing dodgy there, no silvered surfaces, nothing that we can easily create problems with by cleaning. I'll check out the window, see what we've got. Yeah, well now I'd say we were 50% there at least. Looking at that, it's a bit dull, but it's quite unremarkable in terms of the haziness. If it was an older camera and I had no intention of servicing it because it otherwise worked well, I would pick that up and use that camera without a problem. I wouldn't be bothered by that at all. So at this stage, we still haven't done anything invasive. Could we go further? Well, now we get to the tricky stuff, because all of these surfaces are a bit hard to get to. The rear glass here, that could be cleaned. You could remove this screw, remove the rear glass, clean the other surface on it and pop it back in place. The front glass here, I don't know, we can easily get to that. If you used a toothpick, made your own miniature cotton bud, you could quite likely get in there and clean those surfaces. With some, it'd be awkward, but it would be achievable, and that would possibly make a difference. I'm going to take this off the camera to do this piece, just because it's much easier to work with in that case. The screws in this case are very tight, which is somewhat unusual. I suspect that they have been Loctited in, or lacquered in, and might require a bit of extra force. That's one loose. That's the other loose. We'll know the answer to that question in a minute, as to what they've used to stick those in, if anything. I've got the screws there, I'm just checking them to see if they look like they've had anything on them. It's a bit black on the thread. Nothing particularly obvious, and if any sealant, anything was put on there to lock those screws in place, they were very, very tidy about doing it, because there's not much sign of it. So this rangefinder. Now we're still interested in here in what we can do to improve the view through the rangefinder without the use of any serious and difficult techniques. If we take the arm off, I think we can clean the rear surface of this piece of glass here. That screw was somewhat tight. I'll just unhook this spring, put that pin carefully to one side. We're taking the arm off in the infinity position. Bit of wavy washer here, we'll pop that to one side. I'm not even going to disturb that bronze bush. If you had no problem with the arm sticking, you could leave that. So now we have access to this surface here. And looking at that, that's a little bit dusty. And here I'm just using normal window cleaner, nothing flash, nothing special. Right, so I've cleaned that piece of glass. we've got the little window at the back, one screw. There's our piece of glass. Now it's pretty much flat on the outside surface, it's pretty much convex on the inside surface. So we're interested in cleaning the front surface of that, the convex surface rather. And it's not especially grimy. Of course, with the frame gone, we can clean the back a little bit more enthusiastically than we did previously. Put this back on. You'll notice at this stage we haven't touched any of the silvered surfaces. All of the pieces we've cleaned have been plain glass. And we'll put the arm back on the front. Here it would be good practice to clean these components and re-lubricate this, but for the purposes of the demo I'm not going to bother. I'm interested in the optical characteristics, not the mechanical characteristics. So we'll pop that back together. And find the screw hole. Check that the arm moves, get the spring, hook it into the, get the pin hooked into the spring, spring back in place. That's all good. I'll just have a quick look through the rangefinder itself out the window. And that's quite good. I'll pop that back on the camera body because I want to see what it looks like through the viewfinder when the top cover's in position. Run one screw back in. Now the back in. Put my top cover back in position and I want to check it, see what it looks like. Well, that's pretty good. I'd say that's probably 80% of the result I will get by stripping this entirely and cleaning it in the ultrasonic cleaner and all the rest. But I haven't gone near the silvered surfaces, which means I haven't risked rubbing the silver off the semi-silvered mirror, and so I haven't destroyed the rangefinder. There's probably some people out there who have cleaned their rangefinders before and discovered that afterwards there's less of an image than there was before they started. And it's when you start cleaning semi-silvered mirrors, the silvering cleans right away. Alright, so that's what I would do. That's a minimalistic approach to cleaning the rangefinder without risk of doing damage, I suppose, without risk of making it worse than when you started off. I've got 80% of the result there. This was a fairly hazy and dirty rangefinder to start with. Now it is quite clean. As I say, it's probably 80%. The remaining 20% would take me a good 20 minutes of dismantling and cleaning to get to. But if I wanted to go a little bit further and I was feeling brave, what would I do? Let's get this rangefinder off the top of the camera again. And we'll take the arm off the rangefinder. Do I even need to do that? No, I don't even need to do that. Okay. And here. across the rangefinder at this point, at this angle, is the semi-silvered mirror. Now the silvered surface points towards the eyepiece at the back. The front surface of that glass is plain glass. You can clean that front surface without risk of losing your image. The rear surface, however, that's delicate. You could make a mess of it. So if you still had more haze and you were feeling brave, you can just clean this front surface here with a cotton bud. I'll do that. I'll just have a quick look out the window. Did that make any improvement? In this case, I'm not really sure. It was fairly good before I did that, and it's still fairly good. There's still a little bit of haze present, and I think that I can probably put that down to the remaining components. But at this stage, I haven't touched any of the semi-silvered surface of that mirror, and I haven't done anything to disturb this prism at all, which means I haven't upset its adjustments. To clean the other available surface of this prism, I would remove it, and that means the adjustments would be lost, and then you can spend 10 minutes chasing to get them back together. But here we have that. That's a fairly minimalistic approach to cleaning the rangefinder without attacking the semi-silvered, the silvering on the semi-silvered mirror, and so not creating a problem. What else actually needs to be done to do a proper clean of the rangefinder? Well, the dismantling needs to be done. We've done all that already. I clean the components in an ultrasonic cleaner. And because I'm cleaning them in the ultrasonic cleaner, first I remove this mask. This mask is something shiny, possibly nickel plated steel, and the paint comes off very well in the ultrasonic cleaner. So I would remove that before I started. I would remove the mask here and that rear lens component, and I would remove the prism. There are two small screws here that hold that prism in position, and by adjusting them against each other you can rotate the prism slightly, and that gives you your vertical alignment. So here we have it. You can see our semi-silvered mirror. You can see this inside surface there. Now that's the delicate surface that you can see through there, and I don't touch that. I think you can get away with it sometimes, but sometimes you can. Sometimes it's not a problem, other times it is. With a 2A it's not especially delicate. But the front surface is easy to get to, it's just plain glass. And when I'm cleaning these in the ultrasonic cleaner, particularly if I've got a rangefinder that's a bit grimy, I would clean that surface first, so that when I put the rangefinder into the ultrasonic cleaner, it only has to be in there long enough to clean the semi-silvered surface until that's as good as I want it to be, rather than having it cook away in the ultrasonic cleaner for a longer time, particularly trying to clean a much grimier front surface here. And that's important because ultrasonic cleaners will also clean away your silver given enough time. So you clean them briefly and you clean them only as long as necessary. And there's another component in here. This screw on the back. That fixes a tiny barrel on the inside of the rangefinder, and that tiny barrel has a glass lens in it. Having a glass lens, it's got two glass air surfaces to gather up grime. It's not a major attractor of dirt. You could remove it and clean it separately if you didn't have an ultrasonic cleaner, but as soon as you disturb the position of this, because this screw is in a slot here, you can adjust its position. Then you disturb the point at which the images align in the viewfinder. The effect of that is that as you move your eye slightly left or right of centre in the viewfinder, the alignment of the images shift, which makes, trying to adjust your convergent images with the focus lever pretty near impossible. So you have to do a lot of toing and froing to get this to the point where nothing shifts as you move your eye slightly in the finder. It's a tedious job, and to be honest, I just don't do it. I clean this lens in place, in the rangefinder body, in the ultrasonic cleaner, and that proves to be good enough. To get to the glass surfaces on that piece there without disturbing it, well, there's a tiny cutout down there, a little rectangular cutout you can just see. You could make your own cotton bud with a toothpick and a bit of cotton wool there, and you could clean that inside surface. You could get to that. At this end, you'd have to remove your semi-silvered mirror. Now, as soon as you remove it, the chances are that you'll be able to get it back in there without putting a fingerprint on something on a surface that you would rather not have touched are slim. So I don't, but it's certainly an option. That rangefinder body as it stands, that's ready to go in the ultrasonic cleaner for me. What I do at this point is I just take some naphtha on a cotton bud and clean this surface. This is the surface that the arm runs against, and usually it's marked with grease or oil stains or something, and I just want that off there so that when I put this in the ultrasonic cleaner, that I am not making a nice emulsion of droplets of oil to settle on surfaces. So that rangefinder body there is ready to go into the ultrasonic cleaner. And how I clean something small like this is I would put it in a small glass with warm water and a drop or two of dishwashing liquid, and I would put that glass into the ultrasonic cleaner surrounded by warm water. That way you're only having to worry about a small amount of clean fluid to clean your rangefinder. The tank is off, my ultrasonic cleaner is often quite grimy inside because I use it for cleaning all sorts of dirty, greasy things. But that way I'm only cleaning something small in a nice small clean container with a small amount of liquid. But that works well, and for something like that, I just clean that in ultrasonic cleaner. I give it 3 minutes in my one. There's nothing special about it. I haven't got a heated tank, it's just a simple ultrasonic cleaner, and I just put that in, and that's just at normal hot water out of the tap temperatures, something you could wash dishes in. Clean it for 3 minutes. When it's done, I rinse that under the hot tap, make sure I've got everything out of it, blow everything away with a little puffer, and dry the rangefinder completely with a hairdryer. And using the puffer and the hairdryer pretty much simultaneously, you only need 3 hands. You can make sure you don't have any droplets settling on into the surfaces and then drying them, because otherwise they always leave a mark behind like a coffee ring. So you blow away droplets as you go, keep drying it with the hairdryer. Eventually you end up with nice sparkly clean surfaces. As you can see, this one here, this is by no means a bad example at all. The vast majority of the grime I'd already dealt with, and it was on the surfaces that were quite easy to get to. The Prism. With the Prism, obviously it's a wedge shape. It's got 3 faces that we're interested in. The front face, which faces out the front window of the camera. The 45-degree slope here at the back, that's painted over. I think that's actually silvered and painted over. And then we've got another face inside here that faces into the rangefinder itself. This surface on the inside, that's the only awkward one to get to because you have to remove this to get to it. And I clean that with some glass cleaner on a cotton bud. And then use my puffer to make sure any threads have cotton are well and truly blown away. But that's the next task. I'll deal with that later. Get on to stripping the rest of this camera down now.